Is it what I wrote?
My guess.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've been a priest for however long it's been. And
You know,
yeah. So anyway, I think it went well, but it was a
it
little
was good.
good.
Good interaction with the Q&A.
Yeah.
People are like, how can I start it in my hometown? So
Mhm. Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah. And yeah, making those connections. And there were some questions. I'm like, there's like one, are they going to be helping with Afghan refugees? And I'm thinking, did you see the deer in the headlight look? That was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a question. We only have 3 cohorts formed and we're working on all the others. So Afghans, I don't know. Anyway, refugees, I don't know.
I think Wendy for San Antonio, Wendy's working on that. And
Yeah.
we could if a refugee family moves into a district where there is a cohort, we definitely can connect them.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. Exactly.
So
there is that.
Christchurch is already committed to helping a family or two. So
Great. We're trying to think of some language. And I know from other efforts I've been a part of, companioning is about the best word, but adopting that's usually what's been and stuff, but it's also had some like pushback because of cultural stuff.
yeah.
So we got to kind of figure out, I keep talking about homing, how we help somebody make San Antonio their home. And so it's a longer process than somebody, migrating through, right?
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and start the webinar. So it's 1:00. And everyone who's here, you're at track 2 for the faith community resourcing and partnering Bridges to Care in San Antonio. So I see people coming in real quick, and we're going to give everybody a little chance to do that. Make sure they're at the right place. Oh, look, Justin's fan club is already waving. Good.
It's always good to have a fan club.
It's always good to have a fan club. Yeah, and I'm sure, people like me, are finishing maybe the last few bites of a lunch. Even though, what happens, you don't know how this works now virtually, you just go ahead and eat lunch with Zoom, type of thing. People are already figuring this out. So putting their first name and zip code into, and I'm getting hello to me too from Laura. Anyway, if you put your first name and zip code in the chat, that would be really nice. Conference planners are asking for that. Whoops. Jumping ahead of myself. Didn't mean to do that. While we're just waiting, I'm going to wait, I think, one more minute. Might be kind of curious to know, in your chats down there, there's a little emoji to the right. See the little smiley face? You can click on that. And in the chat, put an emoji there. If you click on that, it's going to give you all sorts of stuff. But put an emoji there in chat if you happen to be at the first session, just so we kind of know. Although you're going to get the same stuff no matter what. Oh, look at that! Yay! Yay! This is fun. Vicki Holland is asking about focusing our conversation in the chat or Q&A. I know, Vicki, it's a thing, right? Back and forth and back and forth. But we're going to be doing in the Q&A, the questions for specifically for Justin and the specific topic. We'll be using chat to share things. In other words, your email or send me information or something like that. But if you have questions or thoughts for everyone, to be discussed, if you would put those in Q&A, that would be helpful. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point. And I'm going to introduce myself again. For those who weren't with us before, my name is Ann Helmke, and welcome this afternoon again to the 6th Annual Pathways to Hope Conference. I'm the Faith Liaison with the City of San Antonio and your moderator for the day. And you probably have already, if you haven't, please put your first name and zip code in the chat. And any questions and comments that you may have to the particular conversation, put that in Q&A, if you would. Again, we want to welcome everybody and also share a little bit of housekeeping. If you are attending the conference to receive continued education units or CEUs, please listen carefully. All registered attendees seeking CEUs must remain in the session for the entire duration. These sessions are approximately 75 minutes long, so 1.25 CEUs will be issued upon approval in the areas of LPC, LMFT, social workers, and psychologists. Each attendee can qualify for a total of 4 CEU eligible workshops Friday through Saturday. A post-session survey is required, as well as a daily conference evaluation. For those joining us out of state, please follow our CEU instructions, but it will be your responsibility to seek final approval from your state's credentialing board. We are grateful to have the support of NAMI Texas and the Bexar County Recast Project for making these CEUs available. Again, all registered attendees seeking CEUs must remain in the session for the entire duration. So now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter for this track 2 on resourcing and partnering with Bridges to Care San Antonio. And it's really an honor. Justin and I have known each other for a long time, so it's just really great to be able to introduce him. He's been an Episcopal priest for over 20 years, and he currently serves at Christ Episcopal Church here in San Antonio. At Christ Church, Justin is the Associate for Community Formation, overseeing all outreach, youth ministry, college ministry, and young adult ministry. You sure you don't want to put the elders in there too? I mean, that's a lot of folks right there. Justin is a Bridges to Care San Antonio Wellness Champion and serves on the Bridges to Care Steering Committee and Behavioral Health Network. He is also convener of the Neighborhood Faith Convening Group and author of Faith Family Focused Finances. So we're going to be hearing from Justin just in a minute, but I would like to take a second just to give a general overview introduction of what is Bridges to Care. Again, it began a year ago at the Pathways to Hope on at the Saturday session. So in a year, this is where we've come. It came about through NAMI San Antonio and the City of San Antonio's faith-based initiative And I'm the faith liaison for that. And so we started working together. We met right after last year and started planning. And a month later, we kicked it off, October 1st. In our first track before this one, if you were not with us, we covered congregational cohorts, how they're formed, leadership and its role, what wellness champions are, and that Bridges to Care, more than anything, as Verona always says, is relational, not transactional. So that kind of brings you to what we've already covered today. And now we're going to be covering resourcing and partnering. Later today, we'll be talking about training and evaluating. And then tomorrow we have a session about moving forward in San Antonio. So now I'm turning it over to Justin.
Thank you, Anne. It's great to be with you all. And I moved to San Antonio 3 years ago. In my very first meeting in the city of San Antonio, I walked in and there was Anne Helmke, and brought back memories. We worked together. Actually, she was my mentor when I was in college 26 years earlier to 30 years earlier. And it was great, Anne, to reconnect with you in that moment and now to work together on Bridges to Care. So I know it's fantastic, isn't it?
No,
so,
it's a God
amazing.
thing. Yeah.
It is a God thing. So, and a true blessing. So a friend of mine at my church says, you know, we're not lucky, we're blessed. And so we definitely are blessed in so many different ways. And Anne, you're a blessing to me. And if you weren't at our first session, oh my gosh, Barone Blue, I know you're on this this part of the Zoom and this track. You are amazing. And I thank you for your words of passion and compassion. Absolutely an amazing, amazing workshop. And I look forward to, if you didn't get to hear it, to download the recording and hear just her words of wisdom for us all. So it's good to be with you all. This is an exciting time in the city of San Antonio, an exciting time in the midst of our county and our state and throughout our country, even in the midst of a time that is frustrating and trying. Lots of people are in pain and are hurting, not only because of COVID-19, but because of other things that are happening in the world around us. And it just seems like one thing gets put on top of another. And sometimes it can be so overwhelming that you do not know where to turn or what to do. And I truly believe that Bridges to Care, the moment that it came into being this past fall of 2020, was the right time and the right place in the right moment. It was a time where people needed connection and networking and resourcing. And we have been able to provide that and continue to provide that and deepen that. And so it's a great honor and a privilege of my ministry and of my life and my work to be a part of it. And I thank you all for tuning in and being a part of it today. You can go to the first slide, Anne, or the next slide. There we go. So I love to talk about Bridges to Care everywhere I go. Partially because, like Verone said in her workshop, that it's not a program, it's not something you do, it's who you become. I've become a wellness champion, and for the first time in my priesthood as an Episcopal priest, I now have tools that I never had before to be able to walk with people and be a companion with folks. And so it truly is a movement. It's a movement of relationships and not anonymity. It's a movement of transformation, not transaction. We are in each other's lives because it's a movement and a way of life. And so for all of you who are tuning in, if that is something that you're yearning for and wanting to be a part of, I encourage you to become a wellness champion, to start Bridges to Care in your city, in your hometown, to be trained and to begin to have deeper and more wonderful relationships with one another. You know, all this for me began when I came to San Antonio 3 years ago. The second meeting that I went to was the Neighborhood Faith Convening Group meeting, where I met Jerry Gregory. And I found out from Jerry that this neighborhood faith convening group had been meeting for, at that time, 10 years. And now we've been meeting for over 13 years. And the neighborhood faith convening group is a group of 7 faith communities and all of the schools, public schools in our area, and even a little bit beyond. And the work that they have been doing for these 13 years has just been incredible. And now I have the honor of being the convener of the faith convening group. And it's a grassroots neighborhood way of caring for one another. Absolutely amazing, where faith communities come together with public schools and also come together with other organizations, as well as our political leaders. And we have conversation about what the needs are in our community and how we can be a resource to meet those needs. Never in my entire ministry have I been a part of a group like this. And it's fun, it's exciting, it's meaningful, it's hard work, but it's a joy and a blessing. And so one of the things that the neighborhood faith convening group, when it was first started, it was started out of a need to deal with those who didn't have homes, who were struggling to find their way into employment and into other ways of being a part of our community. And so there was this deep need and desire within a couple people in our community who really wanted to gather everyone together to figure out how we can walk with people and find out what their needs are and move forward with them. It was not a movement ever. The neighborhood faith convening group was never a movement of how we can fix others or how we can tell them what to do, or how we can get them into city services and forget about them. It was definitely always a movement of relationships and transformation. So when I came to the city and came to the first meeting, the group had evolved from where it started. Not only were they still concerned about those who didn't have homes and those who didn't have jobs, but they were also beginning to adopt and partner schools, public schools, because we knew that education was the foundation of how our community was going to change, and not everyone has the same support at home that they might need in order to continue to further their education. The church that I serve had partnered and adopted a school for many years, and with my role at the church, I was able to be a part of that great relationship. And we now partner with 3 other schools. Get this, a church works with pre-K all the way through 12th grade. We have partnered with 2 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. And we see kids from pre-K all the way through to high school. And we even have a scholarship program for their future if they want to go to college or a technical school. That's amazing. That's the work that neighborhood faith convening group is doing. And that work is important because that work constantly assesses what the needs are in our community. When COVID happened, we knew that people were hungry, literally hungry, physically hungry, because they no longer could work and they needed access to food. So the neighborhood faith convening group had partnered with the food bank, and we had food pop-ups, and we were able to actually give hundreds of pounds of food away to folks who desperately needed it. We assessed the needs, and we figured out a way then to help others. Every year we donate school supplies. We all work together to donate school supplies to all of our schools, to donate school uniforms and the like. And we have tutors in schools and mentors. And so when you think about what the Bridges to Care cohorts are all about, it's exactly this. It's something that's already been going on within our city and within District 1. And so when we started the Bridges to Care movement and the training program, there were congregations and people within the congregations who already knew each other in our district, who easily could form the first cohort of Bridges to Care. And I have the honor of being a part of that and still be a part of that. It's the Park Central cohort, and there's 10 congregations, 10 faith communities, and almost 60 wellness champions within our district that have gone through all or a part of the training. And we continue to work together.
Justin, can I just ask you something quickly,
sure,
or make comment? But for those who are listening, as Justin said, the Neighborhood Faith Convening has been in San Antonio for almost 13 years. So when we started to also hear about Bridges to Care in St. Louis and how they were doing that kind of work around mental wellness, mental health concerns, we were like, well, we have a cohort in San Antonio who's been meeting like that. And at the time, for a good decade or more. So in one sense, the story, it's more than a story, but this living experience with this neighborhood convening is kind of like the research that's already been done, right? And so when we started to look at what St. Louis was doing and what was already happening here, it was like we were already seeing the future. Because even though the cohorts come together, Bridges to Care, in terms of that mental health and wellness training, which basically is human to human compassion, right? We can also start to see how people will start to work together in other ways. And that's exactly what Justin just described in the Neighborhood Faith Convening. So we can start to see what this community potential is a decade down the road for our entire city. So I'm going to let it come back to you.
Yeah, and that's great. It's hard to put words around it because when you have never seen it happen before in your community, and now it is. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's impactful. I think the biggest thing for me in meeting the needs of our community is that, and Anne says this quite a bit, we think globally and act locally. And that's what we're doing. We know that our whole city, our whole county, our whole state, the whole country and around the world, people are dealing with their mental health and many in various ways and different levels. We know that people go hungry in our city. We know that kids need uniforms for school. We know that they need school supplies. We know that when COVID happened and everyone moved to having school from their home and having it virtual, that not everyone had an internet connection. We know that people struggle with how to get to work, that transportation has become an issue for them. And the Neighborhood Faith Convening Group, get this, some of our folks went to the VIA board, which is our local public transportation, and asked if congregations could purchase bus passes at a reduced rate so that we then could give them out to people who needed bus passes in our community. And so and they approved it. They approved it overwhelmingly. The board did. And so that's the power of coming together grassroots. We can tell stories of real life people who need to get to work. We can tell stories of real life people who need to find pre-crisis care in their community for their mental health. We can tell stories of people who need the COVID vaccine, and we know where to plug them in, where to send them. And it's absolutely amazing. One of the ways that we resource and have come together is through our behavioral health network. And so if we could go to the next slide. Look at this. This is what we call our circular chart. Now on your screen, it's probably really difficult to read everything. So I'm going to walk us through it real quickly. At the very center where you see the Bridges to Care heart, that is a symbol of every person who lives in Bexar County in San Antonio, every single resident in our community, and their loved ones who might be struggling with a mental health need. And so they're the largest group on this chart, but they're at the very center. So being that they're the smallest circle doesn't mean that they're least important. They're actually the most important because they're at the very center of all that we do, the very focus of all that we do. Around that circle are the wellness champions and the congregations and the cohorts. And so you've heard about cohorts. You will hear in the next session about how we train wellness champions. But these are individuals within our community who have said, I want to learn how to care deeply. I want to learn how to partner with people. I want to be a companion. One of the things at my congregation, we do really well when someone says, I've got cancer. And all of a sudden 30 casseroles show up at the person's house, and we offer to take them to their chemotherapy treatments, and we mobilize a prayer team and that kind of stuff. When someone turns to us and says that they're suffering from depression, we say, oh, okay. And that's the response. So wellness champions are trained to actually have a response, to be able to say, how can I walk with you in this and be available? And so we're moving as a congregation. We're moving into a new way of caring for each other. That it's a physical, intellectual, and emotional and spiritual way of caring for one another. And every single wellness champion and all the congregations and faith communities involved and all the cohorts are figuring out ways that will work in their particular community, their neighborhood, to actually affect change and to have transformational relationships. And so it's amazing. In the next circle out, we've got we have our community outreach workers and the City of San Antonio Human Services. And so one of the commitments that the city made was that not only they would help fund Bridges to Care and the training, but they actually would also have a community outreach worker in every district of our city, and that they would also then have a manager at the central office to help with all that. So these are folks that our wellness champions can turn to when they have a need. They can turn to when they have a question. If there's a chronic challenge within our community, we can turn to our community outreach worker and let them know about that chronic challenge. We can also say, if they already know about it, then we can partner with them to figure out a way that we can work through whatever those challenges might be. And it can be from people who are struggling to find shelter, people who are struggling to find homes, people who are struggling to find work, and also those who are struggling with their mental health. All of those things are powerful. In February of 2020, on top of having the COVID issues that we had in our city at that time, we also had this extreme cold spell that came through. And many of you, I don't need to remind you about that, but it was pretty intense. And I got a phone call on the Saturday evening before it was going to get below zero here in San Antonio. And the phone call was from my senior pastor, and he said, I just got a phone call from a neighbor in our neighborhood who was out and about and saw someone sleeping on the front patio of our family ministry center at our church property. And he said that the police have already come to try to remove him, and he wouldn't go with them. And so Patrick invited me to go down and just check on the situation, since I know a lot of our folks who don't have shelter. And I went there and I knew who this person was. And we were able to, after a few hours of working with him, a gentleman who is struggling with his mental health, a gentleman who had previously been arrested by the police, and so didn't really trust that they were going to take him to a shelter. And so he refused to go. But he knew who I was, and we had a relationship. He knew our wellness champions. He knew our commitment to him as a person, and we were able to get him into a shelter. He, about 3 weeks later, came back to the church, and he explained to me that if he had not gone, he would have died. We saved his life. And that's the power of the community outreach workers, working together with the wellness champions and recognizing that there are folks that have needs. And in the midst of a cold spell, in the midst of power outages and lack of water, that this gentleman's life was saved because there were people there who cared for him. Every single layer works together. And so the next layer out, we have our community outreach supervisors, as well as our project coordinator of Jerry Gregory. And so we've got Bridges to Care staff, we've got outreach supervisors within the city. We have NAMI and all that they do, from the kind of the administrative detail of and taking care of the finances for Bridges to Care, but all of those pieces working together to make all the trainings happen, as well as the resources happen. And then finally, the Behavioral Health Network, which is this big white circle in the very outside with all of the logos, the outside of the donut here. These are all partners, from service providers to congregations to people who care for their community, to folks who can offer funding and training and you name it. We all come together in a behavioral health network. We meet once a month, and we've been meeting for the last year as the Behavioral Health Network. And it's powerful. You know, there's been stories that have come to the Behavioral Health Network that someone wasn't able to access pre-crisis care as immediately as they needed it. And every single service provider here, listed here and even beyond, came together to figure out, well, how can that work differently in the future? How can we hear that story and say, you know what, that's one story, but if it's one story, it's happening multiple times in our city, and that's not going to be the way that we want to move forward. We want to be able to move forward in a more positive way, in a more immediate way, and so that the network works together to figure that out and to actually say, we've got to do things differently. We've got to fund things differently. We've got to request more funding. We've got to provide more opportunities for people to engage in pre-crisis care, and you name it. There's multiple things going on within our city and our county because of the collaboration between the partners here in the Behavioral Health Network. And it's an amazing group of people who are so committed to our city and to our county and to the people. And so it's an awesome opportunity for us. That's how a cohort, a neighborhood faith convening group in a small geographic area of our city, has impact all the way to the major service providers within our city and the major funders within our city. Those stories go back and forth, and we begin to learn what it is that we need to be doing and what the needs are of the people in our community. We do a great job, I think, or we do an okay job. I can't say we do a great job, but we do an okay job of funding crisis care. We probably need more money and more funding there. But we pick up, if we're in crisis, we pick up the phone and call 911, and an ambulance will come and get you, hopefully, and take you to the hospital. And most of our hospitals can find you a psychiatric bed, right? And care for you. But where we have found the biggest question mark for all of us is the pre-crisis care. Someone who isn't at a 911 call level and needs to see somebody, wants to see somebody. This group in this outer circle is working together to figure out what that looks like in our city. How can we have more access and deliver that to the citizens of our city? All of that happens because we're in network with each other, conversation with each other. We're building a bridge of care amongst one another. And that ultimately will affect the center of the circle the most, is the people who need that care. So it's just a joy and an honor to be a part of that in so many different ways. I've got resources now at my disposal when I come across people who need help and who need care that I've never had before. And the resources have been there, but now I know more about them and know how to connect with them. And if we could go to the next slide, unless you want to say something beforehand. So
we've had a quick question. I think it
yeah.
relates at this moment, but please share. I don't know if we've been alive long enough to share best practices, but the neighborhood convening has. Please share some best practices for how a congregation's wellness champions communicate their availability to not only the congregation, but also the neighboring community. Looking for first organizational steps after training.
It's a great question. For me in my congregation that I serve, it's been more organic. And so we haven't brought our wellness champions out in front of the congregation and said, here's your wellness champions. It's been more through conversation and interaction that our wellness champions have had with the people of our congregation. Here's how the greatest impact happens. We have a ministry called Sidewalk Saturday at Christ Church, and every Saturday morning, rain or shine, even in the midst of freezing cold or extreme heat, we offer food and clothing. We make breakfast tacos, and there's coffee. We have a prayer station. We provide resources of how people can get connected to city services and other workforce development things, and you name it. It's all there. So one of our wellness champions saw that one of our individuals, one of our friends from the community, had arrived with a pretty worn out pair of shoes, and she immediately went over to him, had the courage to go over to him and ask him what size shoe that he wore. And he told her. She went and got him a pair of shoes from our clothing closet. We just happened to have his size, which was a blessing, as well as a pair of new socks, and immediately knelt down in front of him, took off the old shoes, put the new socks on, and put the new shoes on. That's what wellness champions do. We don't have to tell the congregation that they're a wellness champion, because ultimately they display what it is to be a wellness champion by how they interact with people. And so I think there would be a lot of different ways within your congregation of faith community that you could do this. We've chosen to do more of the organic kind of natural storytelling that will raise up our wellness champions and our mental health ministry within the congregation. I know that other people, other congregations have put a mental health tip in their email newsletter. I know that other congregations and faith communities have put out a list of who their wellness champions are with their pictures, so that the congregation would know who they are and the greater community would know who they are. So there's many ways to go about that. I think you've got to do what your congregation would be most comfortable with, but really I think the power of storytelling as well, of the impact that wellness champions can make and do make every day, speaks volumes to what they've been trained to do and what they are doing in our communities. Hopefully that helps.
I think Verona also, within the Rafa cohort, they developed like information flyers or whatever, and they put them in barber shops and beauty shops.
Right.
So I think part of it is, to think too about your community, like where does it go, even, like during the pandemic, but where are those connections at? And how can you get that word out? Just wanted to throw that in.
Well, and I think, Anne, that's the power of the cohort the cohorts are geographic. They're located in neighborhoods. The neighborhood faith convening group is geographic. It's a common area that we all know and we work in and have our congregations and faith communities in. And the schools are in that same geographic location. And so we oftentimes know the same people. We know we have the same struggles. We work together to meet those needs. And each neighborhood is going to have a different way of doing that. And I think that's the power of the cohort, and as well as the behavioral health network. The behavioral health network's a big picture, kind of global view of our city and county. But when we break it down into individual areas within the county and within the city, we can begin to say, oh my gosh, there's a need for services in this area. There's a need for therapists in this area. There's a need for people who are wellness champions in this area, that kind of thing. And so sacred.org can map all that for us, which is great. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to just have that dialogue that we weren't having before. One of the things that I have seen in other cities that I've had the opportunity to serve in as a priest is that there's many different silos, right? So there's the city services silo, there's the private sector services silo, the congregations and faith communities are siloed, and then there's probably silos within that silo of Christian and Jewish and Muslim and I mean, you name it, all the different denominations and ways that we worship, all siloed. You've got therapists that are siloed, separate from all the others. And what this behavioral health network, I believe, is doing is that, I mean, no pun intended, we're building bridges between the silos, right? And actually, I would tend to believe that we're tearing down the silos, that we're all working together for the same purpose and the same goal of uplifting our community and caring for each and every person in our community, and caring for them where they're at, and finding out from them where they want to go, what they want to do, who they are, what their story is, and how we can best serve them. And it's an amazing opportunity for all of us. I think we can go on to the next slide.
Seems to me, Justin, a really great example of where you are and who you are. Just thinking too, like the relationships that have already been developed with the schools through the neighborhood faith convening.
Yeah.
What if the information about Bridges to Care with contact information were given to all the school counselors in those schools, so that when they know that there's a family in need, they could make that connection? That would be, I mean, that seems like an obvious kind of that.
Well, it's right? So obvious that it's already been done.
Oh, see, look at that.
Yeah, so we've done that. Our neighborhood faith convening group has actually communicated with the school counselors and the social workers that many of the people in our congregations and our faith communities have been trained as wellness champions. Even some of the school folks have gone through training with us that are part of District 1 so that they can get the same information that we're getting. And so that connection is already happening because of the networks that have already been built through the neighborhood faith convening group. And it is pretty amazing just to think about how, at this point in time, how important that connection really is. So a teacher told me the other day that when school started, she's a middle school teacher, that the 8th graders had spent a total of 1 semester on campus. 7th graders have spent no semesters on campus, and 6th graders are brand new to campus. So you have 3 grades where normally you have 2 grades at least who have spent a year, if not 2 years on campus. You have 3 grades where the maximum amount of time they've spent on campus is a semester and maybe a little bit more. And most of the kids are coming to school with trauma, anxiety, depression. They've had a family member die from COVID. They've had a parent out of work, you name it. And so having that partnership, Anne, that you just described is vitally important. I mean, I can't think of any other time in our history, if you will, as a city where it's necessary that we make those connections, and they're happening. And it's life-giving not only to the counselors to know that they have resources out there, but then also in our partnerships to make that happen. And so it's great. So the ongoing conversation that we have as Bridges to Care is your steering committee meets weekly. Say that 5 times fast. The steering committee meets weekly to discuss kind of the administration and how the movement is furthering and moving forward, and what are the things that we need to be doing, and how do we reach wellness champions in a more effective way, and how do they access training in a more effective way, and what are the needs within that training, and we've tweaked a lot that we were doing at the very beginning to what we're doing now to help meet the needs of our wellness champions and the people in the community. And so the steering committee is at work doing that, and it's a group of 7 of us that work on that. But we don't work in isolation. We work through conversations that you have with us of what needs to happen and how it needs to happen. And then we take a lot of what we talk about there at the steering committee to the monthly behavioral health network meetings. And so the outer circle meets once a month to discuss what's going on in our community, what are the needs in our community, what are the challenges in our community, as well as what are the joys and the blessings of the things that are working for us as a community. All of that within the framework of how to be a more compassionate city and county. And so that's an amazing thing. And so we're resourcing each other to fill those gaps and to meet needs, as well as to share joys of what has been accomplished. The Behavioral Health Network is one of the main ways to do that. And through the Behavioral Health Network and through Bridges to Care, we were able to get a grant for sacred.org, where they're creating a mental health portal. And so it's being developed right now and actually in trial. And so I'm hopeful that within the next few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, that it will be live, and it will be a portal that's user friendly. So you can type in, I need a therapist, that kind of thing, and it can take you to therapists that are nearby. You can type in, basic terms of your mental health, as well as diagnosed terms, so more medical type terms, and it'll take you to the resources in your community that, and it's just a great opportunity. That partnership between Sacred, the Behavioral Health Network, the steering committee, all of that is an ongoing conversation that we're having with one another, so that we can continue to serve our community. So last year at NAMI, this was a dream that Bridges to Care and would be created and would be a movement within our city. Last year, it was a conversation that many of us had in the last workshop of the NAMI conference. And now that conversation is continuing, but there's actually more happening than conversation. As you can see, there's connection, there's networking, there's relationships, there's transformation. People are getting the services that they need. Are we there yet? No. Are we ever going to be there? Probably not, right? I mean, there's going to be constantly more and more that we're going to need to do to love and care for our community. But we're at least beginning, and we're starting, and we're moving forward. And it's the joy of, and I said this earlier, the joy of my ministry and the joy of my life to be a part of this, especially to be reconnected with Ann, but also to work with Verone and Jerry and Doug Beach and many others in the community. It's an amazing opportunity. And I want to close today, and before we take some questions here, to just say, if you're logging in and hearing this, and Verone probably has inspired you more than I have, but if you've logged into the first 2 tracks, I encourage you to log into the 3rd track to hear more about what the training is all about, and to see some of our statistics of how it's working. But if all of that is inspiring you to become a wellness champion or to get your congregation involved, please reach out to us. Reach out to us, because we want to know who you are and how we can connect you. And if you're coming from a different city and logging in today, we want to be able to help you get started in your city. How can this Bridges to Care movement actually not just be a movement of St. Louis and a movement of San Antonio, but could be a movement in every city and community through our country and even beyond. So thank you for coming and joining together, and we'll open it now for any questions that you might have.
I've been following the Q&A. If you have thoughts and want to kind of engage the actual conversation, if you could put those into Q&A, that would be very helpful. I have brought up this slide. It has Justin's email address. So if you have more questions specific to him in terms of organizing those partnerships and structure, you can email him there. Bill Neely, who's with sacred.org, which Justin mentioned, San Antonio Community Resource Directory. I think Bill also put some things in chat, but you can connect with him directly there. And of course, if you have questions about how the city structure works with all of that, you're more than welcome to connect with me as well. So I'm looking around.
There's a question about the community outreach workers and how to access that those services and access those individuals. And so, Vicki, for you in District 1, because you're in my cohort, we're working on developing that access, and we're getting there. I know other cohorts have already built that relationship, and we're starting that. But that definitely is a cohort to outreach worker kind of development, and then the access or their information on their email and their phone number, that kind of thing, will be shared within the cohort.
A good catch on that question. I didn't see it. So thanks
it's
for
in the
catching
Q&A.
that one.
Yeah.
Well, maybe my Q&A is not working. Are there others there? Because
that's the only one I see.
Okay. In starting up in a new area, is it better to start with neighborhood faith community group, which focuses way beyond mental health as a priority, or a Bridges to Care program, which focuses on mental health? I know how I would answer. I'm going to let Justin answer it.
Yes. I would say figure out what your needs are in your community. I mean, you for sure have mental health concerns and needs, but there might be other needs in your community. But I would say, get people together and find out which way they want to go. Do they want to start with the mental health, or do you want to start with other connections, or do both at the same time? Because I think that could happen as well. But to get buy-in from your community, definitely get the neighborhood leaders together and ask them which way they would want to go. So Ann, what would you say?
I would say do Bridges to Care. And the reason I say that is because we could translate, by the way, by saying there's 20 plus hours of mental wellness health training. But that training, when you look at it, It's relational training. It crosses everything. So if perhaps, I have no idea, because I was in the city, but I wasn't around for when the neighborhood faith convening began. But I'm just going to guesstimate that if they had some initial relational training, like this mental wellness, that it probably would have helped them move forward faster. They must have had great leadership who hung in there, because I know by forming community groups, there's a lot it's rough. It can be kind of rocky at first, but I've watched it, like with Verone and these other cohorts, because they get the training first. It's like they already have a foundation of not only how they relate with people they're hoping to work with, but how to relate each other in becoming a group itself. So I would go with Bridges, and I think probably, so I'll say this softly, I think down the road, all the Bridges cohorts are going to be neighborhood faith convenings. They just might not be
For
called
sure.
that. They're going to be doing
Yeah.
all sorts of things together, because
Yeah.
they've created community, but they've done it with some education underneath it that develops common language. It helps us to remember, in one sense, the golden rule. It helps us to remember, from at least within the faith community, like why we have faith at all, that it's, to help others the way we
Yeah.
wish to be helped, to be respected as we wish to be respected. I just think it's a great foundation. And again, I wasn't a part of that to begin with. I was around, but I'm certain there was stuff.
Yeah. And see, I forget that I inherited a 10-year-old neighborhood faith convening group. And so if I was here when it was first starting, I bet I would have said, we need to take this training all together, to kind of lay the foundation of how to, one of our trainings is about building a cohort and building a movement, right? That's part of our training in Bridges to Care. The other part is how to be a companion. And so just in those two workshops, training sessions, you get a lot of what you would need tools-wise to build a neighborhood faith convening group or a cohort more effectively. So you've sold me once again and mentored me once again. So
oh, stop. But we have heard in chat from a couple other cohort leads, and they say, I agree. I love getting to know others in our community and creating our cohort. Fosters relationship building, which provides glue to the cohorts. Again, that neighborhood faith convening had strong leadership, by the way, which was Jerry Gregory, who is now the coordinator for Bridges to Care. So, we got the best to help this move throughout the entire city. We have a question Q&A in terms of getting the information out to the neighborhood. Have you done anything specifically in the neighborhood to get the information out about wellness champions, or congregations within?
Yes, I think each congregation does that differently, and each cohort does that differently. So like Verone's cohort, the Rafa cohort, they've utilized trifolds and resource centers in the barbershops and the beauty shops, that kind of thing. And so it's really up to each cohort and congregation as to how you would get that information out. I do know that on sacred.org, that every congregation that has gone through, every faith community that has trained wellness champions will be listed there. And then within Sacred, so you could click on a congregation's name and it would take you to their page, and it would list all of the various things that they are potentially doing and offering within their congregation that support mental health. And so that's coming as well. Remember, we've only been around a little less than a year. So a lot of this is new. And Jerry Gregory just posted that the Bridges to Care behavioral health friendly congregations are listed on the Bridges to Care website right now. And that's what we call our faith communities, is behavioral health friendly congregations, or they might even be compassionate congregations, and they're listed in various places.
I'm also going to go real quick because there is a question about carrying this information to West Virginia, to somewhere else. So yeah. I've gone to the Bridges to Care San Antonio website, and it's basically the NAMI San Antonio website. And we do have that in the slide, but we can get that to you again. But I'm showing you this. So if you want to tell some folks in West Virginia about it, or family members about it, or go back to your organization, your business, your congregation, your school, whatever it might be, on this website, we have put tools that you can go to directly to help you do that. You can absolutely email or connect with us, but here's a great one-pager that describes it overall. That's a great resource. I don't know if I can get back now, but I'll try. No. And I'm sure Bill is going, come on, Ann, you can do this. I also want to go and show sacred.org as well. Here we go. I found it. But the circle diagram, for example, thought I had it. Hang in there, goes with me. Keep talking, somebody, and I'm going to get there. I'm determined. So here we go. I got it. I just want to see, I want you to see these different things you'll be able to get to. So we looked at a covenant in the last session. The circular chart is here in this section. We have an inclusivity statement and diversity, who the partners are, who the congregations are, the current training calendar, who to contact. Here is a connection to Jerry, and of course there's calendaring, donating, etc. But Justin also mentioned in terms of mapping through sacred.org. I hope this works, because it's kind of like fireworks if it does. Whoa, look at that. Anyway, so we even do mapping through sacred.org, and I want to show you that website next. But these are the cohorts that are information where you see these dots. So we've been talking about District 1, and it goes straight up like this. I don't know if you can see, it's from downtown to our Loop 410. So we have a cohort there, and then this big blue area to the far right, that's District 2. There's District 2. Is this working, Justin?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. And then District 3 is kind of southeast. District 4 and 5 are more central and southwest. District 6 is more west. District 7 is northwest, as well as 8. And then we kind of get up to 9 and 10. But it covers all of San Antonio, which also the precincts of the county encompass all of that and a little bit more. And so both Bridges in the behavioral health network, the county is a part of this, as well as the city. So it's a partnership there as well. And so we're covering the entire geography in the process.
And there's a question about cost for our wellness champions to be trained. And I'll share this. Because of the network, we have not had to charge. There's no cost for the training. But that's because of the behavioral health network. There are service providers within the network who are providing the trainings at no cost to our wellness champions. And then there's also providers within the network who have given money to cover the costs that we do have. And so totally free for wellness champions, other than their time. It's 20 hours. It's a lot of time for a lot of folks, but it's worth every hour.
And I just wanted to pull up sacred.org as well, because we've talked about it so much, this resourcing platform. By the way, all of this work from Bridges to Care to sacred.org, most of this has been done by volunteers in San Antonio who are committed to community and compassion and connectivity. And so all of this that you're hearing about today has almost exclusively been created by the hearts of the volunteers in San Antonians. So this is the main site for Bridges to Care. And so you can see, I'm just going to scroll a little bit, but the different categories that people can search for. And so our wellness partners are trained in this and they're able to use it. It's open to the public. Anybody can use it. So all you got to do is, the address is sacrd.org. We pronounce it sacred, but it's one letter short of that word, but it's San Antonio Community Resource Directory. It's also free and open to the public. So I am going to go ahead and put in here mental health, just so anyone can see that you can go there. What Bill has mentioned earlier is that sacred.org is building something that is specific to mental health and going as deep as we possibly can in finding those resources in the city. So it's really exciting what's being done and how that's being supported. So you can kind of see how it works here. It brings up a list of the things that are available. And you can scroll in. You can also put in different zip codes up here to find things that are in geographical proximity to you. And so that just gives you an idea about how Sacred works. Again, Bill is kind of your main contact there.
There was a comment in Q&A regarding whether starting with Bridges to Care or with the neighborhood faith community group, what would work best. And so some people in your local faith community and in your neighborhood would feel more comfortable with school supplies or backpacks and doing that kind of work. That's why when I was originally asked the question, I said, yes, I think doing both, because there's going to be people who are afraid to engage right in the relationship side. And then you could also get people trained within Bridges to Care. And I think once the people who are trained in Bridges to Care come back to the neighborhood faith convening group and the local cohort and say, oh my gosh, you need to take this training, it was life-changing, then some of those folks who maybe weren't comfortable doing that yet would go ahead and get trained. So I think they could actually, instead of thinking them as one or the other, they could be one and the same. And you could start multiple things at the same time, potentially, to engage a wider range of people. But that was a comment that was in there. And then how do I access recordings of these sessions on Bridges to Care? Recordings of the NAMI workshops that we're doing right now, or is that recordings of the actual training programs? I wonder.
I don't know. I just answered. I believe that the recordings of all the workshops, all the tracks and pathways are recorded, and they're going to be posted on the Pathways website for all of us attending all of this that we're doing these 2 days. But probably what we'll do, and that's something I'm going to write down, but link to that would be the easiest thing on the NAMI and the Bridges to Care. So if somebody wanted to, that would make most sense, right? To put it on that webpage that I showed you, and you could link to it. Because this, I really feel, is going to be one of the deepest explanations all in one spot that you're going to find. Because one, there's more time spent. Usually we don't get as much time, when we go to, present in a congregation. So yeah, somebody said recordings are such a gift. And it does say here, recordings will later be available on the Pathways website. So we'll link. That's what we'll probably do. We need to put it on our to-do list, though. It says here we have about 8 minutes. Any other thoughts or questions, ideas? I'm putting down link to the YouTube. I think what I'll do, there are some closing words that I missed. I'm not going to close yet, but I'm going to go ahead and I'll give people another chance yet to ask something. I missed it in the last session, but I'm going to say it now so we get that done. You can find a recording of this workshop on the NAMI San Antonio YouTube channel in the near future. If you would like a copy of the slides, you can find them on the Pathways to Hope website after the conference. When you close out this session, when this session is closed, and I will do that at the very end, a post-workshop survey will pop up in your browser. And so everybody should see that when I close it. And Pathways values your thoughts and your feedback and will help to shape next year's conference. Also, if you're getting CEUs for this workshop, you will need to complete that survey. By the way, I just heard thunder outside. So thank you, Bill, for putting that information in.
I've got a closing thought, Anne. This is not just another program to add to the list of programs that we've had in our congregations, our faith communities, our offices. Where this is, as Barone so eloquently said in the previous session, this is a way of life. This is a movement. This is a way to enhance the tools that you already have to love and care for your neighbor, to do that in an even deeper way, more compassionate way. This is stuff that you will take with you for the rest of your life. And I have seen it in action. And it's an amazing, amazing opportunity that we have in front of us. It's all about relationships. I think society is good at doing charity, and charity is anonymous, right? We write a check, and sometimes it goes into the world in an anonymous fashion, and we need that to happen. Believe me, I am at a congregation that we enjoy when a check comes in. It allows us to do the work that we've been called to do. But this is not charity. This is a movement of relationships and transformation. It's not a transaction of here's a resource, log into sacred.org, see you later, right? This is, I'm going to walk with you. I'll walk with you to the actual therapist if you need, because within Sacred, you can find, you can say, I want a therapist within a mile of where I'm currently standing, and it can bring that up for you. And so you could actually literally companion someone to their therapist by walking with them. That's the power of all these tools together, is that we can build relationships and build trust, and it becomes a way of life. And I think that's the power of what we're talking about here.
I want to answer this one more question in the Q&A. How do we contact those individuals that need help who are outside of the normal network but need mental health assistance? Again, I would say to that is that people are finding different ways depending on their context and where they find themselves geographically and culturally. And that's one reason the cohorts are formed the way they are, geographically in proximity, because that community is going to be more closely the same, of course. One thing, though, I do want to share with you, and I don't know which came first, but I'll just tell you it's happening. But there has been a huge, and I mean huge, I have no idea how many people, but there's been a huge task force at work through the county on mental health, from pre-crisis to like forever down the road. And what does that all mean, right? But I do know within that, Bridges to Care is falling within the pre-crisis continuum of care and being looked at. But your specific question, how do we let other people know? That's been a significant part of that task force, their conversation. How do we get the word out to everybody about mental health resources and that kind of thing? So I don't have a direct answer, but I do know that people are working on it. And again, these two things I know, that one, word travels fastest from one person to another person. That's the fastest route of any movement, any information. One trusting soul hearing it from a trusted messenger. That's how information travels fastest. And the closer to the ground that you are in giving information in the community, it will also have the most impact. So finding those ways, like putting information into barbershops, putting information, where are those places? I'm thinking now bus stops. I'm trying to think of where are those places. So it's 2:14. Vicki said something, might be a nice closing here. The messenger is the message, or becomes the message as we train and learn to be a healing presence. I love that message from Veron and repeated by Justin, that this is about personal and relational transformation that does not have a shelf life. Thanks, Vicki. Thanks all.
That's awesome.
Our next session is on training and evaluating this work. So I hope you join us. I think that is at, I'm looking real quick, 3:15. Is that right? No, it's at 2:30.
2:30.
2:30 in 15 minutes. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you.